today we're dealing with a sugya which is ad hayom hazeh somewhat of a mystery, as we will see in today's discussion. So we start off with the Gemara in Masechet Shlita, which emphasizes how important Nesias Kefim is. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Kol kohen shemavorach mizborach, she'eino mavorach eino mizborach. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Kol kohen she'eino oile leduchen, oiver b'shloisha asei. Not only one mitzvah, it is three mitzvahs. Koisavohu, Amor lahem, Esomo shemi al b'nei Yisrael, va'ani avochem.
So what happened to the page? Sorry, quite interrupt. The page is on the Marmar Kaimus. If you can kindly get it up, it would be helpful for us to see it inside it. The Rav says it from his memory. Okay, and Schuldig, we're working on it, obviously.
I will be quoting a lot of sources today, and I doubt we'll be able to, to juggle and have them all on the screen. Many times I suggest, I could send over more material, should be distributed between our chaverim. Maybe they'll enjoy to learn some more about it. But we definitely will be quoting most of the sources on our sheet. So we start off with the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Kol kohen she'eino oile leduchen, oile b'shloisha asei. Koisavahu, Amar lohem, V'sami eshami al b'nei Yisrael va'ani avochem. It's that one mitzvah. It's three mitzvahs. So the chinuch on the top of the page, we scroll up. The chinuch on the top of the page writes, as he does in each one of the Taryag mitzvahs. When is the mitzvah noyeg? Where is the mitzvah noyeg? Column number 3. V'noheges mitzvah zu b'kol mokoim u'b'kol zman b'kohanim ki aleihem mitzvah zu levorech es Yisrael. So this mitzvah is not dependent on time or space. B'kol mokoim u'b'kol zman. And it is also clear from the Rambam and all the others, because none of the Rishonim differentiates between Zman Hazeh or Yemei Kedem, and none of them differentiate between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. So it is quite obvious that Min HaTorah, this minig is noyeg kedivrei chinuch b'kol mokoim u'b'kol zman. However, maybe we could have it on our screen. It's not on our sheet. The Moir Uktzio, Rabbi Yankov Emden, twice in his Svorim. Rabbi Yankov Emden has a magnificent sefer on Shulchan Aruch HaChaim called Moir Uktzio. And he also has Shalas Teshuvas Sheilas Yavetz. Shalas Teshuvas Sheilas Yavetz Chelek Aleph Siman Ayin Hey. Moir Uktzio Siman Kuf Chav Ches. Rabbi Yankov Emden, for some reason, writes the Pashtus, that the mitzvah of Nesias Kefim is not noyeg only bisman shebeis hamikdash kayim, and Nesias Kefim bisman hazeh is only midarabon. He does not say why. Neither in Moir Uktzio nor in Shalas Teshuvas Sheilas Yavetz. And he's a yochid b'davar. On our source sheet, and I would suggest in the future, whether I do the Marmar Kaimus or you do, I think it would be useful to have numbers. At the bottom of page number 2, the Sharat Tziyun, the Mishnah Brura in Sharat Tziyun. Veda. If we turn a page, we scroll down, 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 down. We scroll down. More. Down. Here we are. Veda. Then Nesias Kefim b'chutz la'aretz הוא גם כמדאורייתא וכן העתיקו כל הפוסקים, ממרי דרבי יהושע בן לוי. V'hu v'la'el v'siv beis. The Shulchan Aruch brings it in siv beis. But the loikel moirel tzio, shemitzvah midioraisa dafka b'migdosh. Sheshogo b'zeh. He made a mistake. V'shtamit say sifro pasha shmini sifri shoiftim ayin sham v'yushalmi nozi hu b'besoyta lamet ches v'hirani echod mechachmi azman שהוא גם כנגד הבבלי חולן קל"ג, which we won't get into, וגם פשט דקלו, ולבורך בשמוי עד היום הזה, משמע שנויג תמיד. So the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Pasuk. I just want to comment. The Mishnah Berurah writes pashte deklo, but it's Rashi on the spot. In Parshas Akev, Yud, Chet, and I'm reading the Pasuk in its entirety. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he tells Bnei Yisrael, we could have the Pasuk maybe, Parshas Akev, Dvorim, Parsh Yud, Pasuk Ches, and Rashi on the spot. No. Parsh Yud, Dvorim, Parsh Yud, Pasuk Ches. Ve'esahu, hivdan Hashem eshevet halevi. Lo says the Elohim bris Hashem lamed lifnei Hashem l'shosei ulevorach b'shmoi ad hayom hazeh. Rashi on the spot ulevorach b'shmoi hakoyanim v'hu nesias kapayim. So Rashi's pshat in this posuk is ad hayom hazeh v'hu nesias kapayim. So the Mishnah Berurah Shatz here makes it clear. Lo k'divrei Rabbi Yaakov Emden. And Rabbi Yaakov Emden doesn't really, here we have the Moed Tzia, if we could shoot fast, Siman Kuf Chov Ches, and he doesn't explain what is the source. Siman Kuf Chov Ches, and that is the Siman in Shulchan Aruch of Nesias Kapayim. No.
Sorry, Rebbe.
So we can't have it. Okay. Anyway, it's not that important because the Moed Tzia doesn't explain his opinion anyway. So we assume, like the Mishnah Berurah quotes, various sources. Nesias Kapayim is noig bisman hasem, and there's no difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. And that is why it is so difficult to understand the Ramah. So I think we should scroll up and see the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. Sif Mem Daled in Siman Kuf Chav Zayin. Let's start from the beginning. Kohen Afar Pishu Ponui Noise Es Kapov. Even a Kohen is not married, still is Chayev and Berchas Kohen. V'yesh Oimrim De'eino Noise Kapov. Shori b'lo yisho, shori b'lo simcho. V'mavorach yesh lo liris b'simcho. V'nagu sheno yisekapav avar pi she'eino nasoi. U'mekol mokom haroyse shelo u'nisekapav ein moichem b'yodoi. That's the Bis Yosef. So this is not about Chutz La'aretz. It's about a bocha that's not married, but it's relevant, as we will see in a few minutes. This halacha is relevant to our discussion. Now, writes the Ramo, Nagu b'kol medinos elu she'ein noisin kapayim elu b'yom tov, mishum she'az shruyim b'simchas yom tov. V'toiv ayin hu yevorech. He quotes toiv leiv hu yevorech, but the posuk is toiv ayin hu yevorech. Ma she'en k'mishar yomim. אפילו בשבוסס השונה, שטרודם בהירו למען מחיוסם והביטל מלאכתם. ואפילו ביום טוב, אין עושים כפיים ארץ וסמוסף, שיעצר מייס מהבית הכנסת ויסמכו בשמחתם. The Rama seems to say the ikar reason we don't duchen a minute of the week, not even Shabbos, is because a lack of simcha. And a bracha needs simcha. Toiv ayin hu yavayrach, the Rebbe quotes Toiv lev hu yavayrach. Why aren't we in simcha? Because of Parnasa and even Shabbos. But the Rama writes, it's hard to forget that Tzoros. Yom Tov people are more simcha, and the Rama goes to the extreme, only Musaf. And why only Musaf? Because you're on your way home and you think about Sudas Yom Tov. Not very convincing. Not very convincing. So let's have a look at the B'Yosef and the Rama. We go back to page number 1. Let's have a look at the B'Yosef and the Darkei Moshe. Back, here we are. Let's go through the section of B'Yosef. Kosav Abu. Shanishel Mari Molad. That's the Marel. Lamo Eina Kohenim Nosik Kapayim Bakol Yoy Ma'achashu Mitzvasei. V'Heishem Sheminig Kohenim Litpol Koidim. כמו שכוסו בגוס ממוניאס, ובכל יום קשה להם להתפלל בחורף. Winter it's cold, and they didn't heat the water in those days. ולכן, עולו המנהיג דווקא ביום טוב, וגם את ביטול מלאכה, כשכהן אינו עיקר, אינו נקרא, אינו עבר, עד כאן השני. תוך הכעס מלקיים מנהיג מקוימוי, ואינו מספיק. Doesn't make sense. כי מה שכוסו מפני שנוהג להתפלל קודם, הייכם לדוס לכולו. תורתניה בדלותניה. שהתפילה נשיאת כפיים לא יזכרו בתלמוד. Nowhere in the Gemara do we find there's an Indian to toivel before נשיאת כפיים. ואם הם נהגו להחמיא ולתפול, למה יבטלו בשביל כך? שלוש מצוות עשה בכל יום. ואף על פי שאינו יעבר אלו הם כן יקראו. מכל מקום מוטב להם שיקיימו שלוש עשה בכל יום, ולא ידברו, כיוון שאינם מחויבים. And the B'Yosef at the end writes, Yasha koicham shel b'nei Eretz Yisrael v'kol malchus Mitzrayim shenosen kapayim b'kol yom v'einam toivlim l'nesias kapayim. Let us just note that the B'Yosef doesn't come out strongly against the minig. He just writes it doesn't make sense. And we appreciate b'nei Eretz Yisrael v'malchus Mitzrayim shenosen kapayim b'kol yom. But the argument of the B'Yosef is so powerful. It doesn't make sense. Because you're a frummer and you go to the mikveh before Nesias Kapayim, is that a reason to be in a battle? So why wouldn't we say, those that went to the mikveh should duchen? Those that didn't go, leave the shul. Comes the Ramon Darkei Moshe v'ani omer. Ki atam shechosvu hem letofer hu ha'ikar. כי מחמס ביטל מלוך על העם שבאלה הרוצויס, שהכהנים והעם טרודם במכרוסם וגרוסם ואין להם לפרנס בני ביסום, כי המלאכם השיעלקתו בזה אז אפם ביום ביומוי, טרודם למכרוסם ואין להם שום בשמחה לכן, אין עושים כפיהם ביום שיש בו ביטל מלוכה, ואף בשבס, אין עושים כפיהם מפני שטרודם במחשבתם. ואין משלמים כל כך בשמחה כביום טוב שנאמר בו ושמחתו בחגיך, ולכן נשתר בי המנהג שלא לשא כפיים. נשתר בי המנהג. So the B'Yosef and the Rama write 2 reasons. Lack of simcha, the Rama, mikveh, the B'Yosef, strange. So the B'Yosef and the Rama do right. It's not an avera. Because if you're not called upon, then the kohen is entitled to duchen only if he's called upon. And if the shirtzim doesn't call, then you're not mevatel. But the B'Yosef argues, okay, so you don't have an avera of bitla mitzvahs to say, but you're losing out 3 mitzvahs every day. I just want to remind you of the Gemara in Menuchas Mem Aleph. If a person doesn't wear tzitzis, be'idna daritra, he is punished min hashamayim. He's not mevatel a mitzvah because he doesn't have dalet kanfas. But nevertheless, be'idna deritcha, we are punished. If we could have in immediacy the Gemara and Menachos Memala from it Aleph, it would be interesting just to quote because I think it's a powerful argument. So if a person doesn't wear Dalet Kanfas, he doesn't have an Aveira, and he's not wearing tzitzis. But be'idna deritcha, in a moment of wrath, the Kodesh Baruch Hu punishes. Why don't you have tzitzis? Why don't you have Dalet Kanfas? So the argument of the Beis Yosef is if the Shliach Tzibah doesn't call Koyanim, it's not an Aveira. But why wouldn't the Shliach Tzibah call upon the Kohanim? Why not? Why are we mezalzel in 3 mitzvahs asay b'kol yoyim v'yom? So in a tshuva that I wrote 10 different reasons to explain the meaning. Here we are. So mamish in middle of the page. And I will pinpoint it immediately. Here we are, mamish in the middle. Shani Chasidim de Machmer and Avshayu, Veplige de Malacha Ashke Chaylerev Katina. It's the only place in Shas an angel met Rav Katina. Interesting encounter between an Amoira and an angel. A Malach met Rav Katina, the Mechases Sadina. He wore a beged shel pishton without tzitzis. Omalai, Katina, Sadina Bakaita, Sarbe lebesitva, tzitzis shel cheles ma tehei oleo. You're not wearing tzitzis. Omalai, Anshinu asei. Is this, am I liable? On a mitzvah to say, Omalai, Bizman de Ikeritra Anshina. And Rashi and Tosfos explain. Let's see, Anshina and Asay, the Tosfos. We need to scroll down a little bit. Scroll down. Tosfos Dibur Maschal, Anshisu Asay, Kihai. She'einodam Chayev Likno Istala Samachuyev. Emeilo. Aval Asay Gomer Afelo Beisi Shalamata Makano Yisad Shetitzel Afri. Tosfos explains the discussion between Rav Katina and the angel was, I'm not wearing Dalet Kanfas. So, do I bear responsibility for tzitzis? And he said, Be'idnet Ritchies. So the Beis Yosef says, if the Shliach Tzibah doesn't call upon the Kohanim, they don't have an Aveira. But why not? Why not? Be'idnet Ritcha. Why don't we? Why aren't we makbid to be Mekayim this wonderful mitzvah of Berchas Koyanim? Ramami Pano comes out against this minig. And we go back to our source sheet. Mogen Avraham, page number 2. We have the Shulchan Aruch and the Mogen Avraham. Sif Koten Ayin, the bottom, last 2 lines. Omem Ayin Kosav the Minagaruahu. And he comes out against the meaning. V'lo yadati tam. Who is Mem Ayin? I saw some swarm ridiculously quoting Megala Amukos. It's not the Megala Amukos. Mem Ayin is Menachem Azaria. I think there's a reish missing here. Instead of Verama, somehow the Bachas that's a missed a reish. It's not likely that the Mogen Avraham would write Menachem Azaria. But that's the Rama Mipano, who was one of the greatest Gedolim 500 years ago. And in Shuvas Marar, Rama Mipano Semitzadikei, he writes, it's a minig gerua, and we should be mevatel a minig. But he does make an interesting comment. Going back to the pasuk we quoted before, no, another pasuk in Pasha Shmini, Tet Chav Beis, Vayiso Aaron Nesiot Veloam, Vayivorcheim, Parsha Shmini Vayikru Perek Tes, Pasuk Chav Beis. Vayiso Aaron Nesiot Veloam, Vayivorcheim, Vayered Maasoy Sachatos Vaoyle Vashlomim. So the Marmipano brings reason number 3. There is no Nasias Kapayim only when there's a Kor Mechatos, and that is the Musaf of Yomim Toivim. Musaf Yom Tov is a Kor Mechatos, and because the Pasuk in Parsha Shmini says, V'yiso Aaron es Yoda v'ro'am v'yivorcheim v'yered ma'asoi sachatos v'oile v'ashlamim. So there's no Nasias Kapayim only when there's a Chatos, and that is Musaf and Yom Tov. But the Ramam Pano writes, very nice, but it's against the halacha. And in halacha, the mitzvah of Nasias Kapayim is like b'chol yoim, b'kol zman. And he writes, we need to be mabatel this meaning. The Ramam Pano was Gedolei Italy, and he comes out against the meaning. But we do see in Ramam Pano reasoning number 3. Here we are. If we could find some in Tzaddikai, this is the new edition that I have at home. Menachem Azaria Mipano. And when the Magen Avraham writes Mem Ayin, he means Menachem Azaria. I don't know.
They're not letting us. They're not letting us into Said.
Maybe we need a more advanced. I don't know, because
next time.
Anyway. We move on. Beis Ephraim, we have it, I think, on our source sheet. Very little letters. It is the most powerful tshuva in this sugya. Let's see the Beis Ephraim. Maybe we could make the letters a little bigger. He has a lengthy tshuva.
Can the Rav educate the Olam a little bit about Ephraim Zalman?
So the Ephraim Zalman Margolius was one of the greatest Gedolim in a Dor Dayan, in a generation of giants. He corresponds, he was a friend of the Chassam Sofer, of the Kiva Eged, and the Sivis HaMishpat. The Ktsois HaChoshen was, in a way, very different personality than the Nesivis. That is, than his nemesis. The Nesivis was involved in all the controversies of his time. The Ktsois HaChoshen was a misboided. I don't want to say a hermit because that has a negative connotation. But he was a Rav in a little town in Galicia Street. He wasn't involved in any controversy, any halachic storm. He just wrote his gewaldige Sforim. Ktsois HaChoshen Avon Miluim, Shev Shemaitze. There is only one tshuva sefer that has a tshuva of the Ktsois HaChoshen, and that is the Beis Ephraim. So the Beis Ephraim was a contemporary of all the giants of his generation. He was a banker. He was not a Klei Kodesh. He was the Gadol of Brod. He was recognized as the Gadol Ador, in the same level as the Kiva Eged, the Chassam Sofer, the Nesivis, and the Ktsois, which is an interesting phenomenon because he was a very wealthy person, he was a banker, and he was one of the greatest Gedolim of his time. And this is a very powerful tshuva. We're not going to go through the entire tshuva, but some selected lines. בדבר ששואל כבוד הרוסה בדבר המנהג הנהוג בכל מדינת אלו שלא יהיו קהל הנויסק כפיהם כי הם ביום טוב לבד ויש מי שריבונו כפוי בדורו לפי שמצווסי מן התוירו שיהיו נויסק כפיהם בכל יום אם יש מוקר ויסוד למנהג זה ואם יש כוח לבט לו אם לא. So let's see the first lines of this tshuva. בתחילה הווה אלוהי כי המנהג שאנחנו נוהג גם היום שלא יסוכר כפיהם כי ביום טוב יש מקום שנהג אפילו שבוסס אם מן הקודם יויסר מן 500 שונו. It's a minhag that goes back 500 years. כמבוא בספר תשבץ קוטון, שחיבר תלמידוי של מרם רוטנבורג, רבי של הראש. And he quotes the Sefer Tashbetz Koton. My Rebbe, Einoi Oimer Achar Berchas Kohen Vesumi Shemi, מפני שאפילו ברכס כהנים לא יהיו לו אלוהים ממנדין, שבימיהם היו אוהלים לדוכם בכל יום, וכנגד זה אנו אומרים ברכס כהנים. So Maram Rothenberg was noyag that the Shliach Tzibor doesn't say Borcheni B'Brucham Shaleshes B'Toiro. He does say Yivarech Hashem, but he does not say B'Sameh Shemi Al B'nei Yisrael Yivarchem. Because Me'ikar Adin, we shouldn't be saying that. Because if you don't do it when there are Kahanim, there's no reason to say Berchas Kahanim when there are no Kahanim. So what we learn from this quote is, in the days of Maram Rothenberg, there was no Nesias Kapayim in Chutz La'aretz. And Karbo quotes the Maram Rothenberg saying, let's go down 5 lines. V'kein kosev b'kol b'simen kuf chofei, and he quotes, Eina minig atu lasis nesias kapayim ele v'shabbos v'yom tov. Interesting. In their time, in their space, Shabbos as well. Weekdays not, but Shabbos yes. Ve'efshar ki nimnu mipnei Torah hatzibur. Oh, that's a new reason. Torah hatzibur. ואחריהם החזיקו מהריל, שהיה רבם של כל גדולי מדיני אשכנז ואוגר והדר כמוישה. נראה מדבריהם שאין לא זז מן המנהג. וכן נראה מדברי שאר אחרונים, ואף בספר לא יכוסף, כי הם ישק כוחם של בני ארץ ישראל מלכוס מסיים. אבל מכל מקום לא מויקה אנשי לכתוב שראוי לבטל המנהג, כדרכו בשעה מקוימס. So the Beis Ephraim, before writing any reason, writes, Chaz v'sholem, even to contemplate being mevatel a minhag that goes back 500 years. And he quotes many early sources. We scroll down, down, down. Va'ato ahuvu yedidi, down. Va'ato ahuvu yedidi, Yere v'yishpoit be'ein sichlois ha'gaboyrem anshe Hashemu eila asher ha'kotten shebetalmidei talmideihem kotnam avo memasneinu. Ha'em Omer Yoino leitze b'yad Ramo. You're going to fight these gedolim? No. No way. Now, second paragraph. And this is the Gevaldige Chiddush. Second paragraph. Down. Scroll down. From the heaven, they enlighten my eyes. And this takes us back to our discussion last week and a week before. Do you remember we discussed what is the Isser of Azayra Oile Leduchan? What would be the Isser, the Gemara in Sub is that Chav Dalet, if a person that's not a Kohen and is Oile Leduchan? The Gemara says, Bittul Mitzvah Sasei, Rashi writes, Koisavahu, Kohen Berozah. So the Beis Ephraim is the first one to say, there's a downside to Duchanim, this man said. It's not only a question, why aren't we Mekayim Mitzvah? There's a risk. And he follows in the footsteps of many giants. And this is a huge controversy. How do we relate to Koyanim, this man said? Chuvas Maharaj Dam, that the Beis Ephraim quotes 6 lines down. Shuvas Marashdam Kosav in Yeshavui Alakoyen. אני סומך בזה על מה שכוסף הריבש, כהנים שבדורסנו שאין להם כסף ייחוס, אלו מפני חזקוסון, נהגו היום לקרוא ראשון בתוירו, but our Kohanim are not Kohanim, ודאי רק סופק. So, many Gedolim throughout the ages were somewhat skeptical about Kohanim Mizman. The earliest are the Rivash and the Marashdam, and many others that the Beis Ephraim quotes. Chuvas Maharit, Kuf Memtes, comes out strongly against them. And this is a huge discussion. Many chuvas that I wrote about Cheshashis and Kahuna, I mentioned this controversy. So the Mishnah Brura maintains, Chas v'sholem to be mefakbek in Kahuna b'zman hazeh. After all, our Kohanim say a brocha on Duchanim. We say a brocha on Pidyon haben. If it would be a suffix brochas l'kuli. However, the Beis Ephraim argues, if there's any question about our Kahuna, you run a risk of an Avera. Because if you're not a Kohen and you're Oila L'Duchen, that's an Avera. It's a Isur Asay. So if you're not Oila L'Duchen, you don't have an Avera. Because if you're not called upon, then you don't need to be Oila. If you are Oila and you're not a Kohen, and you might not be a Kohen, that's an Avera. So the Beis Ephraim, what is unique about his Shita? All the others are somewhat apologetical. We look for Terutzi, but it's not convincing. And the B'Shesef's question, Zoyek ad l'shumayim, why not? Why not? Do go to the mikveh, don't go to the mikveh, you're happy, you're not happy. Doesn't make sense, why not? The Beis Ephraim says, according to those Gedolim, that the status of Kohuna in our days is questionable, you run a risk. It's not only about why not, it's about why yes. Let's go over to the next column. And this is really surprising. Let's move over to the next column. Now, let's scroll down, up, scroll up, scroll up, up. We go up. Let's scroll up a bit. Up to the top of the column. Lo neskar rodato shel Beis Ephraim, Rav Ephraim Zalman Goris, up to the top of the page, top of the page. And this is somewhat of a shocker. ולפי זה אדרבה בצורך ליישב מנהג ארץ ישראל במלכות מצרים, דנוהג הבא שיעשה כפיהם בכל יום, איך לא יחששו לזה? כיוון שכהנם אין בידם כסובם המסייחסים. וכן למנהגנו שנושא כפיים ברגלם, למה לא יחשינן דילמה עבדי איסור? Oh, this is taking it to the extreme. So the Beis Ephraim says, it's not us and Chutz La'aretz that we don't do it, that we need to apologize. Now, the ball is in their court. Let Chachmei Eretz Yisrael explain to us how they are Oila L'Duchen B'Kol Yom, and why are we not afraid to be Oila L'Duchen on Yom Tovim? I think this is taking the argument to the extreme. I would say, a Goron, a Godel, a Tzadik, Ofer Anitachas Kapas Raglo, but chill out, cool down. Don't get too excited with your argument. He goes to the extreme and he says, how come we're not choishes? How could we ever be noisei kapayim? I think that is taking it to an extreme. After all, we are noyeg b'mitzvahs kahuna. How could we say a kohen is a sofet kohen? So how do we make a broch on every pidyon haben? How do we make a bracha order to duchen? Let it be a chazaka, but we rely on chazakas. Anyway, so the Beis Ephraim is very interesting, and he comes up with this new argument, arguing that there's a downside, there's a risk on duchen. And therefore, it should be no wonder that our minig in Chutz La'aretz is not to duchen. The Beis Ephraim, somewhere along the way, and let me try to find it, comes up with another reason as well. So anyway, towards the end of the Tshiva, once again, the Beis Ephraim says, this is a minig that goes back 500 years. Kol Gedolei Ashkenaz, and therefore we have no permission at all to be mefakbek, and chas v'sholom to be mishana the minhag. I'm just looking for something which is also a big chiddush. If we don't have it in the Beis Ephraim, and it is in the Beis Ephraim, I'm just looking for it. Sefer HaMekzoyos. Sefer HaMekzoyos. So Sefer HaMekzoyos is a sefer that we had on our source sheet, I think, last week. Last week we had it. But it's in the Chasam Sofer anyway. Let's move over. Next page. Chasam Sofer Simachov Gimel. Chuvas Chasam Sofer. Let's turn the page. Next page. Top of the page. Chasam Sofer, page 5. Here we are. V'yodati ki agon Moreno Harav Zalman Margos v'Chuvas Beis Ephraim es oirer al zeloim and the mishum kach. So the Chasam Sofer comes up with a reason, al bidrush, and the Chasam Sofer writes, Nesias Kefim in the Beis Hamikdash was b'shas avodah. V'yisu Aharon es kapov v'yevorech esu am. So in the Beis Hamikdash is a mitzvah of Nesias Kefim, and that's why Chazal were metaken that Nesias Kefim is in Chazorah Seshatz bebirkas u'avodah, because in Beis Hamikdash it was part of the avodah. So the Chasam Sofer writes, as we all know, tefillah is tachas korbanos, and therefore kavana is so important in davening. And Bismana said we don't have proper kavana. And Psul Machshava passes a korban. It also passes tefillah, and therefore maybe that would be another reason that we don't do duchenim, because our tefillah is not a proper tefillah, so it's not a proper avodah, and a Nesias Kefim needs to be avodah. Once again, not very convincing. Not very convincing. But before this section, we just have this little part of the tshuva. But some sort of quotes the Beis Ephraim, and I don't find it right now in this moment. But the Beis Ephraim quotes the Sefer HaMekzoyos. Sefer HaMekzoyos is the Rabbeinu Hananel, also quoted in the Ravid and his Perush HaMasechet Tomid, that there could be no Birchas Kahanim in a home where there's the Isha Nido, which is strange. In Halacha K'moisoi. The Pri Chodosh in Siman Kuf Chov Ches. Could we have Chuvas Chasam Sofer Simachov Gimel? If we could fetch the Tshuvas Chasim Sefer Chaim Simachot Gimel, would be interesting. Could we have Tshuvas Chasim Sefer Chaim Simachot Gimel? I think it is today to make an effort.
It's coming up in a second. Which Siman?
Siman Chav Gimel. Tshuvas Chaim. Chasim Sefer.
Here we are. It starts.
כהן שנכנס בבית שאישו נידו שם לא יבורך את ישראל וברכוסי כלול את החושב לא יברך עלי אבל פי חודש מסיים אין לפרסם את דבר והנה מלס כבודו עבר על דברי עצמי והרי פרסם. Oh, so this is an interesting tshuvah. There's some Sefer writes, you're writing to me about the Ben Chanan and you quote the pri chodesh she'ein lefarsim hadavar. So are you mefarsim? הנה, דבורם אלה הביא המערבת בפירושו למסכת תומד ונדחק מאוד למצוא טעם בדבר. And now we just scroll down. We're not going to go through the entire tshuva. And the Sefer writes, I know that my friend Reb Zalman Margolius writes, maybe that is the reason that we don't do Nesias Kepayim in Hutzlaritz. Let's go down. So he has a lengthy discussion about the Sefer Mitzvahs. It definitely is not lahalocha lamaisa. We go down. Towards the end of the tshuva, he writes,
Yodati.
Yodati ki agora zame agoras b'tshuvas v'sefraim n'Yisrael zeloimah the mishum kein ein hakohenim v'yisikoteim b'chol yoim v'yoim b'zmanein. V'yodati ki agoren Reb Zalman agoras. And it definitely is in this tshuva. One more source that we'll not have on our screen, but anybody that wants to check it later, because I think it's interesting. Zera Emes. Who was the Zera Emes? Zera Emes was the Rav in Modena, Italy, one of the greatest Sephardi Gedolim, Rabbi Shmuel HaKohen. And the Poskim called him Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, one of the greatest Gedolim of his era. Chuvah Emes, Chelek Gimel Siman Yud Gimel quotes the Zohar that when a non-Jew is in shul, he is ma'akav the bracha. Here we are. Wow, amazing. Zera Emes says Rabbi Shmuel HaKohen, quoted usually as Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. Chelek Gimel, could we have some Yud base? I hope. Oh, Hebrew books will let us have it. This is not the
old
Zera Emes Yud base Chelek Shlishi.
The problem is it's the old print. It's hard to read, but we'll get through it.
But anyway, so there's a new edition, a beautiful one that I have at home. So the Zera Emes brings the Zohar twice. Parshas Nosei, Parshas Mishpotim. If a non-Jew is in shul, you don't say Berchas Kohenim because the bracha is not chal. And maybe that is the reason of Chutz La'aretz. And that would be a reasonable explanation differentiating between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. Because the other explanations are somewhat not so clear. As the Beis Ephraim writes, according to me, B'nai Eretz Yisrael need to apologize. Why do you say Berchas Kohenim? So the Zera Emes writes based on the Zohar.
Rabbi, which Siman, please?
The Yud base. We need to go back a lot. A lot back. Most of his tshuvas are very long.
Rabbi, a question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Is it possible that you're saying that because of the presence of a non-Jew, that negates the kavana of Birkas HaKohanim?
The Zohar says that there's a non-Jew present, then the bracha is not bestowed upon us min hashamayim. We don't understand anything about this. It is, it's penimius. But it's in the Zohar twice, Parshas Nosim, Parshas Mishpatim. And
Pesach, you're going the wrong way. It's Yud Beis 12.
Yud Beis.
Can't just scroll back.
Go a lot back.
No, it says here it's Siman Lamed Zion, but in terms of Siman, the Shas Hashuvas are coming out Siman. There's different Simanim. It started from Lamed Beis.
Let's just ignore it. I don't think it's that important. I am quoting the essence of the tshuva.
Okay.
And I think the reasoning is Mishum Eva. We didn't want it to be obvious that because there's a guy we're not saying, and when he walks out, we will say. That is very risky. And because it was very common that people came in and out, for many reasons. Non-Jews worked in our shuls, and therefore, to prevent an Eilo situation, the meaning was just, here we are. Kedas malasis em ye'era, shevo nochrim, liroises beis Elokeinu, v'yes'aku sham b'shas berchas koyanim. ומפני הירו והכבוד אי אפשר להוציאם החוצה. האם יש לנו להניח שכאן הם יעלו לדוכן? So he was asked in Manitoba, that's Italy, and he was asked, what do we do if non-Jews happen to be present? And he says, you don't duchen. And towards the end of the tshuva, he writes, maybe that is the reason that our meaning is not to duchen and chutzlaretz. And the way I understand it, we don't want it to be obvious that when he's in the shul, we don't, that as he walks out, we do. That will become public information, and it definitely could harm the Jewish community, and that is why the meaning was to totally abstain. And now we wrap up our discussion. Two most important sources, the Aruch HaShulchan and the Meshiv Dover. We have them on our sheet, page number 3. So after a lengthy discussion, the Aruch HaShulchan, page number 3, bottom of the page. We scroll down. Here we are. Aruch HaShulchan. אין שום טעם נוחן למנהגנו לבת למצווה סיידה ברכס כרם כל השונה כולו. Because הוא דמין הגרוע הוא. That's the רמה מפנו, מם עין. אבל מה נעשה? כאילו בס כל יוצא, שלא להניח לנו לשא כפיים בכל השונה כולו. It's an interesting expression. כאילו בס כל יוצא בנשמה. ומקובלני ששני גדולי הדור בדור שלפנינו, כל אחד במקומו, רוצו להנהג נשיא כפיים בכל יום, ושהגבילו יום המוגבל הזה, נסבר בלא עניין, ולא יעולו להם, ואמרו, שרואים כי מן השמיים נגזרו קין. ומצד הדין יש לו אמר על פי מה שכוסה בסויר, ומתס על פי הסויר, דבין השמחה דומי דהרן. So he writes, something surprising. 2 Gedolei Ador in previous generations tried, and something happened, and they saw an Oisman and Shemayim. Who are those Gedolei? Chuvas Meshiv Dover. Zechorani, the Meshiv Dover is the Netziv. Zechorani Nishushamati, Kimdumani Machoisni, Hagoen Maritz, Gaivid Balash. And Nesiv was a son-in-law of Rabbi Yitzhak Mevelosh. Rabbi Yitzhak was the son of Reb Chaim. He published the Nefesh HaChaim. It's a bit strange to me that the Nesiv writes, I think I heard from my father-in-law. This is such an important testimony. And he writes, I heard, I'm not sure from who. I think from my father-in-law. שפעם אחד הסכים רבנו הגר"א להנהיג נשיאת כפיים בכל יום בבית מדרשו. ועקבו מן השמיים, ונלקח לבית האסורים בעשר מחלוקת הנורא בווילנה, לא עלינו. When there was a huge controversy about Hasidus, the Gaon was taken into custody in the local prison. And that happened one day before he planned to start Nesiat Kapayim. V'yachar kach, Chami Zakeni, Gaon Abir Aroyim, Moharach, Reb Chaim Mevelosh, Hiske b'yom echad sheb'yom ha'mochras, Yitzav Nesiat Kapayim. U'ba'oisei la'ero nislaf chatzi ha'ir v'beis ha'knesset shebe'ir. The shul burned down, half of the city burned down. V'rov ezboinenu sheyesh b'zeh eset v'asod, b'sitrei hashpoes ha'broch ha'yoret, al yedei nesibir kaskoya nevapotzas, v'ein itonu yodea ad mo. So this is a shocking testimony. What is interesting, then it still was a Litvak. It wasn't the Chosed. And Litvaks in those days, everything has changed today. But in those days, what was so characteristic of Lithuanian Jews was their intellect. They weren't mystical. So when the Gra was taken into prison the night before Nesiat Kapayim, Reb Chaim Mevelosh still wasn't deterred. He wasn't turned away. Years later, he tried. But when half of the city burned down, one night before the morning, and he planned Nesiat Kapayim, that was already too much. And Reb Chaim backed down, like the Gaon back down. So in the Chuvas I wrote about this topic, I wrote, Dafka. Dafka because this is such a strange minhag, we need to be matbed even more. Like the Nesiv writes about Reb Chaim Mevelosh and the Gaon. Like the Yochel writes, Ki'ilu bas kol yotzei min hashamayim. So if we would have clear reasoning, it's shaykh to be mefalpo. Is the tam yes shaykh, is the tam not shaykh, is the reason for leniency. But because in 700 years, nobody really came up with a totally convincing reason, I think that is reason I've got to be machmir. And therefore, my psak is Sephardim, of course, Ashkenazim, stay away and don't dare. Don't even dare to contemplate. So my tshuva I wrote, even a minhag that's all Israeli, when they're in Chutz La'aretz, no duchen. The last part, I want to quote my father. My father was a Ilui. And in my tshuva, scroll down to the last ois A. Very last section of this short tshuva that I wrote. Ois A. Davar nechmad b'yishuv minhag menechet zoretz. And I quote my father. So let me give a brief introduction. Reb Shlomo Rabbi Gottesman knew my father. Probably some of you listening to my shiur met my father. Excuse me for quoting Goyim. That's interesting. So Thomas Jefferson once said, all my life, I was searching for the wise innocent, and I did not find one. I don't know how to translate in Yiddish or Lashon Kodesh the wise innocent. He didn't know my father. My father was the wise innocent. He was such a Harav, such an Ilui, such a great Talmid Chacham, and he had so much tmimus. So my father was very much into Birchas Koyanim. He davened in Beis Yehoshua every morning, and there were minyanim. He used to be in shul about 2.5 hours every morning, and he used to go from one minyan to the other. Arangechat nocha berchas koyanim. He was very much into berchas koyanim. And when he used to travel to Chutzlaretz, he used to pay people money, go to berchas koyanim on my behalf. So my father was a lamdin, and he knew there is no shlichus for berchas koyanim. There's no such a thing that one person goes to berchas koyanim for another person. But he had an Indian to pay someone to go to berchas koyanim on his behalf. So my father was very, very much into berchas koyanim. I don't go to many reunions, they're free. I don't have time. But to me, it's very heartwarming when I remember my father was such a pikeach and so wise, and with so much tmimus and so much pashtus. And my father had to give out the gevurot. So one of the big dilemmas is berchas koyanim is a mitzvah d'oraisa, but berchas koyanim is associated with avodah, and berchas koyanim is only berchas avodah and shmoyne esrei, but tefillah is midrabanan. So how could berchas koyanim be d'oraisa if tefillah is d'rabanan? So Moshe Chaim maintain the connection between berchas koyanim and tefillah is only midrabanan. Min haTorah, koyanim are mitzvah to ben shin every day. But if you don't come together for davening, then when exactly is the kohen abachiv to ben shin? Where? In the workplace? In the bus stop? In the train station? Where? Eimik brocha. If we can have at least the daf hashar of the same Eimik brocha, Rab Aryeh Pomeranchik. Rab Aryeh Pomeranchik was the Talmud of the Piskarov in Yerushalayim. And he has a magnificent sefer called Eimik brocha. What people don't know, this young Talmud Chacham died when he was 30 years old. And in his short years, he produced 3 amazing svarim. One on Soroim, and Eimik brocha is on Moyadim, Seder Hayom, Nasias Kapayim, he quotes the Briskerov, and Briskerov quoted his great father of Chaim Brisker. And this word is typical to Brisk, and he says, according to the Ramban, the chiyuv of tefillah is the Rabbanon, but the essence of tefillah is definitely min haTorah. So the essence of tefillah is min haTorah, even though the chiyuv is midrabanan. So min haTorah, when people come together to daven, then the kohen has a mitzvah of berchas koyanim. But if they don't come together to daven, there is no mitzvah. Kosav haramban, ele moyad Hashem, nashe tikru oisam b'moyadom, parshas moyom. We could have the Ramban on the screen, and it'll be great. I'm opening up the Chumash before me, and I'll quote the Ramban. Perek Chav Gimel, Chumash Vayikra, Posik Beis. Ele moyed Hashem, mikroi kodesh asher tikru oisam b'moyadam. Oh, here was Eimik brocha. Wonderful. Who was the Mechaber? Rab Aryeh Pomeranchik. He passed away when he was 30 years old. He lived in Pesach Tikva, but he was very close to the Briskerov. And some of the Chedushim of the Briskerov have no other source besides the Sefer Eimik brocha. So let me come back to my father's word. The Ramban writes, Posik Beis Perek Chav Gimel and Parshas Emoyah. Nasias Kapayim. He has a piece about Nasias Kapayim. I think he should be right after this piece or right before it. Some shtickle on Nasias Kapayim. Here we are. Nasias Kapayim. First piece. ולאחרת צורכיון. דו איקר דנסיס כפיים מהר בשעס הווידה. כדי יסה בסוית דף למד חס. כל כהן שאין אוהלה בהווידה, אין בבכס עצי. שווה אין אוהלה. But according to רמב"ן, תפילס מדרבנן. שמעתי מכבוד מורי ורבי הגיא ודבריס, בשם עובר מורן הגרח הלוי, שאחודיק שלוי, נעשויברים דתפילה אינר מדרבנן, היכי תוכן נשיאת כפיים בגבול המדיורייסה, ולכבוידו, ותרץ לו. דאף לעשויברים דתפילה דרבנן, היינו דווקא חויבס התפילה, דמדיורייסה לכחיוב ולהספלל, אבל עניין התפילה הווה מדיורייסה לכולי עלמא, ואם הספלל, Shapa Makai Mitzvah D'Oraisa Mikra Avodo. So if a minyan comes together to daven, then there's a Chiyuv Nesias Kapayim. So that's a Chiddush. So my father's spark of genius is this: the Ramban in Parshas Emor. Tam Mikroi Kodesh. I'm quoting the Ramban. Chav Gimel Beis. Tam Mikroi Kodesh. V'yom hazeh kulam kulim v'ne'esofim lekadesh oisoi. Ki mitzvah al Yisrael lehikovitz v'beis Elokim b'beis b'yom moed. Mitzvah al Yisrael lehikovitz v'beis Elokim b'yom moed. Lekadesh hayom b'farhesya b'tfilo v'halel. Wow. We could have the Ramban. That's great. That's great. Hanochen bi'einai. Let's scroll down. It's a long piece. Scroll down. Down, down, down. Next page. Hanochen bi'einai. Down. 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 Next paragraph. It's not on our page yet. V'tamik roi kodesh, this paragraph. Shiur b'yom hazeh kulam kruim v'ne'esofim lekadesh oisoi ki mitzvah al Yisrael leikobetz b'beis Elokim b'yom moed lekadesh hayom b'farhesya b'tfilah v'halel. So the Ramban writes, what's Mikroi Kodesh? This day you all need to come together. Lekadesh hayom b'farhesya b'tfilah v'halel. So the only day in which there's a Chiyuv D'Oraisa to come together to daven is Yom Tov. That is why Birchas Kohanim is only in Yom Tov. Because Yom Tov is a mitzvah D'Oraisa to come together. B'yom hazeh al Yisrael lehikovitz v'beis Elokim b'yom moed lekadesh hayom b'farhesya b'tfilah v'halel. And that is the source of the minig. There's only duchening on Yom Tov, because that is the day in which we all are called upon, Minat Torah, to come together to Beis Elokim, Besasev b'farhesya b'tfilah v'halel. So without tefillah, there could be no Birchas Kohanim. But no kedivrei agrees that tefillah is D'Oraisa, no. So the only day in which is a mitzvah D'Oraisa to gather, b'farhesya, b'tfilah v'halel is Yom Tov, and that is why in Chutz La'aretz it's only Nesias Kapayim. That's my father's word. I think it's the spark of genius. So today we had this fascinating discussion about Minhag Chutz La'aretz. I think we discussed approximately 10 different reasons. But at the end of the day, so I quoted my father in this tshuva, so it's a schus to me when I could share divrei Torah from my father. So at the end of the day, like the hiyoumhashchor writes, like the Netziv writes, this is a minig that goes back 700 years. Nobody, it's chas v'sholom, that is just to tamper with the minig, especially after we read the tshuva of the Netziv, two gedolei olam, the Goen and the greatest of his Talmidim, Chaim Avoloshin, cried, and they stepped back. So this is a minig we need to be very